Welcome to this learning session on 5S. The title of this session is 5S in the Workplace, Organizing for Greater Productivity. So this is one of the series of learning sessions for the public sector productivity here at the Development Academy of the Philippines. My name is Niña Maria B. Estudillo. You can just simply call me Niña. Professionally, I'm doing independent work as a trainer consultant on productivity and quality improvement alongside organizational development. So I'm also, and I received an honorary certificate from the APO, from the Asian Productivity Organization, as productivity practitioner. And I also had the opportunity to share my knowledge and my experience on productivity and quality improvement over the years in different countries as APO technical expert trainer. So let's start with this session. I would like to start off with sort of a story. I came up with a simple storyline of how 5S has a significant contribution to our society in general. So there are actually approaches to productivity improvement in the public sector. So we're looking at the changes in the work processes, maximizing contribution of human resources, optimizing equipment materials, and changes in managerial approach. So the question really is, how can productivity improvement be able to address changes or the dynamics that are happening in the workplace in the context of public sector? In terms of work processes, in terms of the human resources, in terms of optimizing equipment materials, and in terms of approaches in management. So as you can see in the slide, there are important conditions in this approach. In technical we mean the right productivity tools and techniques. Of course, politically, we cannot also ignore this reality. We look at the top leadership, change champions, and in terms of behavior, we look at the engagement of people and gain sharing. But for my particular topic, we will focus more on the technical condition, or the topic on 5S is directly linked to the technical condition, which is right productivity tools and techniques. So let me begin the story. As an agency or an organization in the public sector, it is important that we realize what is the value that we can contribute to our society. So when we talk of value creation, we look at how our agency is efficient and effective in performance so that we are able to contribute something to our society. Okay? And of course, how can this be a reality? How do we make this happen? There are productivity tools and techniques that we can actually apply. For example, 5S. And how will these address the changes, the 4 areas which I have mentioned a while ago, where these changes are actually happening in the workplace? Actually, it's not just happening in the productivity, in the public sector rather, but it is also happening in the private sector. So we look at the 3 key areas where these changes occur. We look at people, the structure, and the processes, or PSP also. Work processes, capability building, utilization of equipment and materials, and of course, managerial approach. So in terms of people, we look at the capability building. We look at also, in terms of processes, the work processes, utilization of equipment and materials. And in terms of structure, we look at the managerial approach. And in public sector productivity improvement, it is important for us to make these productivity tools and techniques lead towards a systematic and integrated approach to performance of an organization that will then create value to the society. And also, since DAP is a national productivity organization, DAP also promotes the framework of public sector performance excellence based on the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award, which is given to organizations that have achieved a certain level of excellence. So as you see here in this framework, I would like to emphasize that 5S, along with the basic tools and techniques in productivity, sets the foundation for total quality management, which leads to public sector performance excellence. So I finally welcome you to 5S after that introduction. Our objectives of this session is that at the end of the webinar, I would expect, or the participants are expected to be able to explain the key concepts and principles of 5S, identify and describe each of the phases and or the steps of 5S. So we can call each of the S's and the 5S as a phase, but at the same time, you can also refer to it as step, each of the steps of 5S. At the end of the webinar, participants will be able to demonstrate 5S in the workplace, and they will be able to determine how 5S can improve public sector productivity. So our outline is simple. This session is made up of 4 parts. We answer the succeeding slides will answer the following questions. So our outline is in question form. What is 5S as a productivity tool or technique? Second, what are the phases and or steps of 5S? Third, how can 5S be applied in the public sector? And the fourth one, how can 5S improve public sector productivity? So the first one, what is 5S as a productivity tool / technique? You may ask, why is it really a tool or technique? Why use both? Well, in the context of productivity and quality, 5S can be, from my own experience over the years, 5S can be referred to as a tool. When you talk of a tool, it's something that you can carry out. It's something that can be tangible. You can see it, the result of it, you can see it, you can experience it. So that for me is a tool. You experience it, you carry it out by yourself, and of course with the other people. It's a technique because it follows step-by-step procedure. Okay? So it has a set of procedures or rules. So that's why it's a technique. So in that sense, 5S is both a tool and a technique. Now, when every time I talk about 5S, I always would like to cite the journey on productivity improvement because 5S is very much part of this journey. And this journey is made into reality through what we call the CI or continuous improvement, or in Japanese term, it's Kaizen. Kai meaning change for the better. So as you can see here in this slide, we notice, or you will notice, that 5S is really the very first step in the journey of productivity improvement. So you can see here the set of productivity tools and techniques that when implemented properly will help individuals and organizations continuously achieve targets that evolve periodically. Because as we know in productivity, targets evolve periodically, meaning you set targets annually, quarterly, or even within a 3-year period. All right, so like any productivity tool or technique, 5S becomes more meaningful when it is meant to address or solve a problem. There is a problem when there are disturbances or abnormalities in the workplace, in an agency or in the public sector context for that matter. These abnormalities are mostly and initially linked to areas that are immediately visible, such as individual workstations, your own tables, your own work areas, offices, the lobby, the bulletin boards, toilets, and even our parking areas. However, it must be noted that the impact of 5S goes beyond physical visibility. It can bring changes in the structure, processes, and people, leading to a culture of productivity where continuous improvement is a way of life. Imagine yourself in this scenario. How do you think you can be productive at work? Maybe you are now asking yourself, oh my, what is this? What am I into? Or maybe some of you, oh well, I can be even more productive, Nina, because I remember some of my friends would tell me, you see, when my table is messy, I am even more productive. But after implementing 5S, mind you, they came back to me and they told me that yes, if I was productive before, Nina, when my table was in a mess, I became even more productive when I implemented 5S in my own workstation. That is why it is important to pinpoint where the problems are through some signs. The signs usually come as a mix of different scenarios and their immediate effects. There are common signs that problems in the workplace are happening and need immediate action. Let's take a look at some of these. I am now referring to the actual workplace that we often, what we find, that we can find in a typical work environment in a public sector. Let's take a look at what I'm referring to as signs. If there is inconsistent cleanliness and orderliness, cluttered work area, that is, it may cause delay in the processing of documents. Imagine yourself in this scenario. Definitely, it takes time to look for documents needed. Another, inadequate space. Lack of space creates a poor layout that may block the walkways or spaces for the employees to move faster. If, for example, you need to coordinate with someone from another office, but given the scenario that, you know, it has poor layout and there are maybe blockages or equipment that are hindering your walkways, so chances are you will not be able to or move faster going to the other office. So this is what I simply mean. Okay. Difficulty in retrieving files. This is also another sign that there is a problem. More specifically, I am referring to the lack of proper or standard labeling of items or files, which is also very common, a common sight in many agencies, in many public organizations. Search time, what is the impact of this when you are in this kind of scenario? Search time is prolonged, which may cause delay in the processing of requests for documents. And citizens may then have a reason to complain. Also, things are not put in proper place or storage area. This may also prolong search time and may lead to a delay in taking action. You know, even if your action is personal, the effect can have a negative impact on citizens waiting to be served at your agency's doorstep. So, imagine you're taking a break and you cannot find your water or your food or your snacks because you forgot where you actually put it. So even if it's just a simple action, you know, some citizens or customers are outside the lobby waiting for you to attend to them. But just because you were not able to look or to get your snack because you were supposed to take your snack. So see, this may just be a simple thing, but the impact that it can do to the citizens or to the people, the customers waiting for you, will, you know, it will also create a problem on their part, right? All right, so what is 5S then? You see, 5S, actually the concept of 5S started from the West. You know, the Japanese engineers during the World War, when Japan has experienced this economic decline, so they went to the West, to the US, and they studied, they did some research on how they can help the Japanese economy. What are the approaches, tools, and techniques in the West that are very effective that they could bring back to Japan and which will also help them in the process of helping the economy. Okay? And one of those tools and techniques that they got or they learned from the West, from the gurus like Deming, Juran, is 5S. So the concept of 5S does not really, or did not originally come from Japan. But one thing very interesting with the Japanese counterparts, with what I have learned from my Japanese mentors years back, is that they were able to customize 5S in their own language. They were able to contextualize 5S in the Japanese culture, such that that's why we now have 5S in Japanese terms. Seiri, the first S, Seiri, the second S, SEITON, the third S is SEISO, the fourth is Seketsu, and the fifth one is Shitsuke. By the way, we pronounce Shitsuke with silent U. Okay, that's what I learned from my Japanese mentor before. So, now in the literature, even in Google, a lot of 5S practitioners now, many, you will see this as a common slide that you'll see, like sort is still sort, so they have their own translation of 5S. Sort is still sort, SEITON is set in order, SEISO is sweep or shine, the fourth one is Seketsu or standardize, and the last one, Shitsuke or sustain. Okay, so as we go along in our discussion in this learning session, so from time to time, I will mention the 5 S's in the Japanese language and at the same time in the English language or the English term. So, again, we go back to our storyline, the framework that I have shown you a while ago, that how 5S can actually give significant contribution to our society. For me, from my experience, 5S is very effective in inculcating, developing a mindset, a culture of productivity. It may be simple, but it has a very huge outcome, so to speak. All right, so 5S has basically, we look at 3 areas where 5S can give its most significant value or contribution. So here, you can see in this slide, 5S as a systematized approach. By the way, just like any productivity tool and technique, it follows a sense of logic. It is step by step. So it has a system. That's why it's systematized approach. It is a systematized approach to organize work areas, keep rules and standards, and maintain discipline. Okay? So what areas is this particularly addressing to in terms of work processes? In terms of capability building, because in the process of systematizing approaches, people have to learn how to do it. So people gain knowledge and develop a certain expertise in terms of being organized, following a system. Okay? So work processes, capability building. So also 5S, one benefit is that it utilizes workplace organization and work simplification techniques. So again, 5S is able to address changes in the work processes, especially now that technology is frequently changing and also given the constantly changing demands of our customers, of our citizens. So we cannot just, or rather, it's important for us to evolve and innovate in terms of our work processes. So 5S can help us out on this. In terms also of changes in utilization of equipment and materials, 5S can definitely contribute on addressing changes in this area. And 5S practice develops positive attitude among the workers and cultivates an environment of efficiency, effectiveness, and economy. So with this, managers can adopt this kind of approach in terms of developing creating this positive attitude. How? Managers themselves have to set an example. So they also have to implement 5S, of course. Okay, so for me, from my experience, that this is how 5S can contribute to managerial approach. Of course, given the dynamics in the organization, how people work together as a team, how some are more effective when it individually. So 5S can have itself be integrated into these areas in terms of changes work processes, capability building, utilization of equipment and materials, and of course, managerial approach. So, what are the phases and or steps of 5S? Okay, so there are, as you have heard me saying or mentioning 5S. So there are 5 S's. Okay, let's take a look at the first S. The first, by the way, in 5S, if you are just starting or just about to embark on your 5S journey, I would like to emphasize that you have to focus on the first 3 S's. Okay? So you have to do religiously the first 3 S's. Because when you reach the first level of S, okay, so the first 3 S's I'm referring to Seiri, which is to sort. The second is SEITON, or to systematize or set in order. The third is SEISO, to sweep, okay, or to clean up, okay, or to shine, okay. So there has to be, from my experience, there has to be a mastery of the first 3 S's before you are able to reach to the 4th level. Why? Because in the 4th level, which is Seiketsu, this is when you set your standards. You document the good practices that you have demonstrated in the first 3 S's, and you write them down. Okay, this can be your basis for developing your, what we can also refer to as workplace standards. Meaning to say, your standards at the 4th level of S, which is Seiketsu, are based on your actual practice. Okay, such that when you reach the highest level of S, which is Shitsuke, or self-discipline, okay? So when you already have the set of standards, and these are properly documented at the 4th S, which is Seiketsu, then it would be easier now for the organization, for the people from the top down the line, meaning to say from the agency head, or if it's a local government unit, from the mayor, from the, or in a provincial government, from the governor himself, down to the councilors, to everyone. So they have, normally if you are in an agency that has ISO quality management system, you have what we call the manual. So in 5S, your quality workplace standards or workplace standards that you have documented, developed in the 4th level, which is Seiketsu, will now become your basis for your 4th level, which is your Shitsuke, which is self-discipline. Okay? And this will also help your agency develop that kind of culture that everybody follows the standards, follows the rules. All right, let's go back. So the first in the 5 steps is Seiri, which is to sort. I would like to start with a short game. I'm sure everyone can relate to this, even if you are just in your own offices right now or in your homes. Okay, then you can join me in this. All right. So what is it? What do you think is, what is it that you see on the slide? I'm sure you are now thinking about this. And your guess is right. That's a bowling ball. All right? Now, what I would like you to do, right where you are, you count how many bowling balls are there on the next slide that you will see in 5 seconds. All right? So I will count off 1 to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Got that? Okay, I'm sure you're now telling me that, oh, you're telling me, oh, I saw 20 bowling balls, or I saw 12, I saw 15. So definitely there will be different guesses. Okay? Now let's take a look at the next slide. See, how many bowling balls do you see? For sure, in just a second, you already guessed it right. So there are 24. You guessed it right. So you see that it was rather easy for you to pinpoint or identify how many bowling balls are there on this slide. Why? Because it is already sorted. So the bowling balls were grouped together, 5 numbers per group, except of course the other group which has only 4 bowling balls. So it was compared to the previous slide, so maybe it only took you 30 seconds to identify the number of bowling balls. So this is very much related to the first S, which is Seiri. So in Seiri, we select what is necessary and dispose the unnecessary items properly. So just like the bowling balls, so it was rather easy for you to count the number of bowling balls on the succeeding slide because it was already sorted. It was already grouped according to a specific number. Okay, just like in sorting. Okay, in sorting, I always say this: you choose those that you still need, and you do away with those that are needed. So right now there is a, I think this is very famous on Facebook. There is this lady who, what's her name? Who was introduced this, I forgot about her name. But what she's saying, what she's sharing on Facebook is, it's very much in sync with sorting and 5S. So you try to get rid of those that you don't need anymore, and you can actually resell them, or you can actually give them to those who might be still needing these things that you don't need anymore. What are the key principles of a Seiri? There are 3 key principles of Seiri or sorting. The first one is waste elimination. So in the process of segregating or identifying the things that are necessary and unnecessary, so you eliminate the waste, because sometimes we accumulate a lot of things. Especially we ladies, we are very sentimental, so we keep a lot of souvenir items when we travel abroad. Okay, before we know it, we don't realize that we accumulate them over the years, over months. So, and then suddenly our space is, getting tighter and tighter. Okay, so and these things are not needed anymore, and they become waste already. That is a simple way of explaining the key principle in Seiri or sorting. You eliminate waste in the process of sorting. The other key principle is what we call stratification management, and the third one is dealing with causes. Let me go to the next slides for the other principles. All right. When it comes to stratification management as a key principle in Seiri, so this is how we do it. How to Seiri your workplace. So you ask the question, which are not necessary, which items are not necessary, and which items are still necessary. So this is when stratification management comes in. So you look at items that have no value and you can easily dispose of them. So items that have some value for sale, or items that have no value but their disposal may be costly. Okay? Especially for hospitals, for healthcare institutions where they have big equipment, that it may be a little bit more costly when it comes to disposing them. So they will require a specific process or specific way of disposing. So given the stratification, there is a specific action to it. So if you have items that have no value, easy to dispose, we can throw away immediately. Those that have value for sale, maybe we can look for a buyer. Or those that have no more value, but disposal may be a little bit costly, you work out a less costly and safe way for disposal. So it would also help if an agency or an organization can develop a policy on disposal, or you also come up with a disposal procedure. So on this slide, we see a simpler way of presenting stratification management. So you have stratification, you segregate or you separate things that are needed from those that are needed, and then you further analyze in terms of, so for the things needed, what are those that I constantly use? What are those that you occasionally use or you seldom use but you still need? So you take a look at the specific action or appropriate action. So those that you constantly use, you place them as close as possible. For example, you're in the office, your ball pen or stapler or paper clips, or of course your laptops, you place them as close as possible. Occasionally used, you place a little further away. That's why in some offices they have a separate cabinet for some office supplies. Seldom used but still needed, you enclose in a separate designated place. Now for things that are not needed, if it has no potential use, so that's why you go further in terms of classifying things that are not needed. So for no potential use, you immediately dispose of them. Potentially useful or valuable, you consider where useful and move. Requiring special disposal, you can arrange and you can come up with a less costly disposal procedure. There are some examples of Seiri practices. So first one, criteria for sorting, disposal tags. So let's see, criteria for sorting. So this is an example of criteria for sorting. This is from an LGU in Valencia City, Bukidnon. I was able to get this from one of their presentations. So they just simply presented it this way. So there is their sorting criteria. Those things that they refer to them as low use, others average use, high use. So they further describe those that they refer as low use and then the specific actions. Same thing with the average use and the high use. Okay? So in your own agencies, you can develop your own sorting criteria. Okay? Applying the principles of stratification management. Okay? Which is this one. So how do you separate things that are those that are needed and those that are not needed? This is another example of a general policy or guideline on sorting. You can adopt this or you can develop your own. My advice is that be as simple as you can. Okay? Make it very simple. You can use simple words as long as everybody understands, so that it will be easier to follow. Okay, this is an example of disposal tag. So you can create a form. So there's a disposal notice. There is, which contains the following: inspector's name. So for some, they refer to the 5S auditors as 5S inspectors. So it also depends on you. There are no fast rules on this. So in this particular example, we see here, you have to indicate your name. For example, if you are the one who did the inspection or the audit, the 5S audit, then you describe the item. What is it? What is it that you notice, that you observe in that particular item? And then, when was it posted? Then, please reply. Okay? So you indicate who will reply, or who is the one in charge, or they would refer to the person as the process owner. Okay? Then there is another form, which is the owner's reply. So it is expected that the owner of that particular equipment, or the one who is in charge of a particular equipment, should be able to describe what is the status. Is it for repair, or is it actually for disposal already? What is the plan? How is he or she going to dispose of that item or equipment? Then, of course, the name, the owner, and then the date. So normally we refer to this as the red tag disposal. Okay. Another practice in Seiri is what we call the Akafuda, or red tag operation. Normally, I cite as an example when, you know, when there is big sale, when it's a season for sale in different malls and department stores, you will notice that some of the items are labeled. They are either, the labels are colored purple or sometimes yellow. This is to indicate that these are for sale. So the idea or the concept of that is very much in sync with the Akafuda, or the red tag operation. So those items or areas where there are abnormalities that are observed by an inspector or by a 5S auditor, then a red tag is placed or is attached to that equipment or to that office or area. Okay, so that is what we call the Akafuda, or red tag operation. This is to indicate or signify that there are things that are not needed, that appear to be no longer needed in the work area, or they may needed some repair, or they may need some repairs. And then in this on this slide, you can see also 5S red tag station, because when you do, let's say it's a Seiri day, so it's also, it would help if you have a designated area where those equipment or those things that have been tagged with a red are put together. Okay, so that's part of sorting of Seiri. And then for others, they also have what they call the 5S red tag. So there in the red tag board, the procedure of tagging or giving, you know, putting a mark on those things that are no longer needed are provided. Okay, so that everybody acts with the same rhyme and reason. All right, so this is an example of a designated storage area for disposal, which normally happens during a red tag or Akafuda red tag operation, which is part of the sort or Seiri activity, the first S. So again, on this slide, you can see an example of a red tag form, which has some details. Okay, so here you've noticed that there are classification of the items. So if, for example, if that item is a raw material, this is particularly applicable in a factory, in a manufacturing area. Now, in the public sector, in a government office, it's more on, maybe you can classify or use the tool, finished product, or the complete document. So you can include that in the classification. Or a work in progress, or document in progress, report in progress. Raw material, instead of saying raw material, supplies. So supplies would refer to bond papers, staple wires, pencil pens, board markers, etc. And then, of course, there's the name of the item, order number, quantity value, then reason for giving a tag on that particular item. And then, which is the section responsible, what is the action to be taken. So, the one who fills this out is the inspector or the 5S auditor. So, for the action to be taken, the auditor or the inspector need not prescribe what particular action to be taken. So maybe he can suggest, but not necessarily prescribing it. Because, why? Because in productivity improvement, we allow the process owner, the one in charge, to think of a more specific way, specific action, because he knows better, because he's the one using the equipment, or he is the one in the workstation after all. Right? And then the date, and then also the reference number, so that in terms of monitoring if action has been taken, it would be easy. So you also indicate the reference. Okay. Next example of in the first S doing Seiri is the use of material list. So name of the agency. This is a form. So you indicate the department, the division, the section, and then the item name, description, quantity, etc. And you describe that particular item that has been, maybe it has been marked that needs action to be taken in terms of Seiri, or if there is a problem. But when we talk of material list as a Seiri, it would help you be able to remember the FIFO, the first in, first out action that for example, if you have some supplies or materials, so it's easier to pick them up or to locate where they are. So if you have, for example, a cabinet, a filing cabinet, before you open the cabinet, so there is a list of what that cabinet contains. So that is also an example of a list. Okay? So here, when we talk of material list, that can also refer to the supplies that are inside a cabinet. So maybe inside the cabinet there is a masking tape, a ruler, markers, permanent and board markers, and bond papers. Okay? All right. So that's for Seiri. Remember, the key principles in Seiri is waste elimination. So when you're able to identify the things that are needed and those that are no longer needed, so in the process, you eliminate waste. Because maybe we are not too conscious about it, we tend to accumulate a lot of things. Okay? And some of these things may already be, are good as they should be disposed already as waste. Then, of course, stratification management. The principle of stratification management simply means you classify things that are needed and not needed, and you further identify in terms of those that are still needed, those that are should be within your reach, meaning these things that you frequently use, things that you occasionally use, and things that you seldom use. Okay? So those that are not necessary anymore, still using the principle of stratification management, you further classify them in terms of having value but not needed anymore, so you might want to dispose of it. Okay? And having value, but you feel, or you would rather that you sell it, because you can also, you know, I remember my husband worked for a small and medium enterprise before. So what they would do, they would gather the scraps. So when they do Seiri, they would, of course, separate the scraps. And then they would gather the scraps and they would sell it. And then the money that they get from selling these scraps, they you know, save it for their Christmas party or for a birthday. Those that are not, don't have value, but the disposal may entail cost, then it will, you know, you need to have a procedure. All right? So the key principles, remember in Seiri, or to sort, waste elimination, stratification management, and the third one is dealing with causes. So that is why when we do root cause analysis, which is also very much related to ISO quality management system, so you see, even root cause analysis is already being introduced in 5S. Okay? So when we are able to do away with things that are not needed, you see, things that are not needed or unnecessary, some of this, we may not be conscious about it, are factors that may cause some problems that we have. Okay? For example, you accumulated a lot of files, and then you notice that you cannot close your cabinet any longer the way you were able to close it easily. Why? Because there are files that are still inside that cabinet that already have cobwebs, that are already have been there for what, 10 years? Okay, so later on, you'll realize that the cause of that cabinet, this is a very simple example, but you know, this can also happen to you, okay, in some ways. So that is a key principle in Seiri. We are able to deal with root causes, okay? Do away with causes that will lead to problems or abnormalities. All right? So we now move on to our next, the second S. So after you are done with classifying the necessary things from the unnecessary, when we go to the next S, which is SEITON, we systematize things, meaning you set everything in order. In this step, we keep those things that we have identified as still necessary, meaning they are still of value to our work, to what we do at work. So we organize necessary items for easy and fast retrieval. What are the key principles? Functional storage, meaning to say, whatever equipment or furniture that you have in your workstation, you make sure that it has a function. So imagine a cabinet or a table being there for how long, but nobody is using it, and yet it occupies space. It's not functioning at all, okay? Or a television set, or a big screen of a computer which is there, but it's not being used because it's not functioning at all. So why keep it? Why put it in that storage area when it is occupying space and it is not needed anymore? Another key principle is a place for everything, meaning everything that you use in your work, in your office, so you put them in their proper places, in the proper areas, in a proper cabinet, and with proper labeling. The third principle is what we call search elimination. So when, for example, your files are properly labeled, are properly arranged, so in the process, you reduce the search time. Okay? So, and eventually, it becomes a habit for you to retrieve easily the file and put it back easily because you have an organized filing cabinet. So that's search elimination. Remember the key principles: functional storage, a place for everything, and search elimination. Now, how do we do SEITON in the workplace? So in this second S in SEITON, what matters are the necessary items. Okay? Those that we have picked up from Seiri, okay, and of the first S. So pick up as necessary. Here, we also apply the stratification management process. So here, you further stratify or classify the items that are frequently used for the necessary items. They must be placed near the point of use. The items are sometimes used or occasionally used. You can place farther away. And items that are not used at all but must be kept, they can be stored separately with clear identification. Here are some examples. So imagine yourself that this is your own table, in your workstation. So the table with a question mark, you see that? So there are documents that are piled on top of the other. This is a no-no in SEITON. Okay, and also the other picture or illustration is you can see a person and the files are also piled up on top of the other, and in fact they're higher than that person, the height of the files. This is also a no-no in SEITON. In fact, there should be nothing on floor and no horizontal piling. So the correct SEITON practice is the second table with a check. Okay? I hope you get it. Now, let's take a look at some SEITON practices. So the first, we follow the FIFO method for storing items. So we get the first in, the first in, first out method. So I think this is self-explanatory. I think we all know this. Another is you assign each item a dedicated location. This is applying the principle of a place for everything. Okay? All items and their location should be indicated by systematic labeling. Okay? So also a place for everything and having a functional storage. And also search elimination. So you are in the process, you are able to eliminate search time. Another is making items visible to reduce searching time. So we use color codes. So we see this in organizations that practice 5S or ISO quality management system. So they adopt color scheme method in terms of filing. So it would be easy for you to, for example, if files that have something to do with your project management documents, maybe you would like to make use of a folder that's green color, and then for your financial documents or your computation for your resource allocation in terms of finances, you might want to assign a folder with a different color, maybe a blue one, okay, something like that. Then, you also arrange items so they can be reached or handled easily. So these SEITON practices, if you notice, these are actually the application of the three key principles: having a functional storage, search elimination, and a place for everything. Okay. Some more examples: separate special tools or devices from common ones. Even in government, you might think, oh, do we have tools like that? Of course. In government, like in the services group, or in the group where the group in charge of vehicle maintenance. So they also have tools similar to this. So that's why I'm giving this as an example. Place frequently used tools, devices near the user. Fixed and stable article for safety, and keeping space for safety equipment and evacuation passages clear. This is very common in factories or manufacturing areas, but also in some government agencies, they do have some marks, because that will help you easily locate where the offices are, or where a particular cabinet is, or where a particular workstation is. Okay. This is an example of a SEITON practice in terms of organizing a file, or some people would refer to it as file management. So you notice that when you put together all the files, the folders containing the files, it would form a particular figure. So if there is a missing document or a missing folder with a set of documents, then you will see that the figure is not properly formed. Okay, so there is an incomplete figure. Okay, so you notice that. So this is, I think, one of the photos taken in a Japanese company. Let's also take a look at a SEITON practice. This is outside the work environment, but this caught my attention when I was in Singapore before. I came across with this, how the food items are arranged on sale in a huge mall. This is Food Republic. I don't exactly know, I don't exactly remember where is this, but I was caught by the way the items are being arranged. And this is an example of a SEITON practice. Okay? Because 5S, as we know, or as you may know by now, it's applicable not only in your own agency or organization, but you can practically apply 5S in your own homes, right there in your own homes and in your communities. In fact, may I mention that there are barangays that are practicing 5S. I can pinpoint Barangay Ugong in Pasig, where I come from. So when I was still with the AP, this barangay has been our partner in promoting 5S in the community in barangay. All right. So moving on, the succeeding slides are examples of SEITON practice. All right. The next, moving on now on the third, to the third S, which is SEISO, sweep or shine. Okay. So the first two S's, you did sorting. The first S, sorting, and then, or the second S, you systematize, or you set in order those things that are needed, that matter, that are of value to your work. Now, for the next S, this is what we call SEISO, or in English translation, sweep or shine. Sweep can be a figure of speech, also shine, but what we mean here is that sometimes in reality, we tend to address or look at those things or consider those things that are visible to us. Okay? Remember what Prince said? What is essential is invisible to the naked eye. I somehow relate this to SEISO. Why? Because normally, like at home, whenever we sweep the floor, we clean up our surrounding. Sometimes we have this tendency, even our kasambahay, okay, our house help, they have the tendency to just sweep those that, can easily be seen. But actually, there are still dirt in there, inside the cabinet, or under the bed, okay? Under the oven, for example, inside the oven, okay? But if we are not to address this can also lead, to certain abnormalities or accidents later on. So that is why this SEISO is sweep or shine, because we are encouraged not just to clean up those that we see, but also clean up those that we do not see. For after all, as Prince says, what is essential may be invisible to the naked eye. So that is why in SEISO, there are key principles. Cleaning as a way of purifying the spirit. Cleaning as inspection. Particularly, I am linking this to what Prince said. Cleaning by inspection. When I was a project manager, and when I would conceptualize a project document, I was too lazy to go down to the canteen or to the cafeteria. So I would bring with me nuts, peanuts, or corn. And because I was too busy thinking, conceptualizing a project, a training program, then I forgot that some of the nuts and the corn are already falling down on my own keyboard. So it can also cause the malfunctioning of the keypads. Okay? Anyway, so a principle of SEISO here is cleaning as inspection. You clean the internal, the interior of an equipment, okay? Not just the surface, at the surface level. Now, the key principle of cleaning as a way of purifying the spirit, we get it from the Japanese. If you notice, whenever you enter the temple, they would wash their hands, okay? Because for them to have this intimate moment with Supreme Being, they have to be clean. So, also, for example, if you're a car owner, you try to practice this. This is a SEISO practice. When you clean up your own car, after that, you experience a different high. You experience a different sense of fulfillment. And also, you save on cost. You don't have to pay for your car wash or something. So this is cleaning as a way purifying the spirit. Also on a weekend, when you're cleaning up your own room and you're cleaning up your house, then you also experience a different high, different sense of fulfillment. So this is what we mean, cleaning as a way of purifying the spirit. So in SEISO, when you do this, literally and figuratively, so you will also experience this sense of fulfillment. Okay? And you will notice that you become more productive, you become more vibrant, you become more motivated, you're driven to, move and do action. All right, and the third, elimination of minor defects. So this is somewhat related to search elimination and dealing with causes in the first S, which is to sort. So you eliminate the minor defects. So sometimes, like what the specific example that I cited a while ago, you notice that your keypad, one of your keypads, is not functioning. Why? Because a particle must have, accidentally fell down or something, and it, got into the interior, and that's why it's not functioning. So if you do SEISO, if you clean your keyboard, okay, later on I will show you some slides, specific slides, demonstrating how these principles are applied. Then you eliminate in the process that minor defect. Okay? So this is what we mean by these principles. Okay, let's take a look at some examples. Oh, there you go. On this slide, you see a computer and the keyboard. So you prevent things from getting dirty. You can use transparent plastic dust cover, or just like, for example, on this laptop, I make use of this cover, this one. So to prevent dirt or dust from getting inside the keypads. So this is also a SEISO practice. So cleaning this up. So this one, you covering your keyboards. Next, some SEISO practices, you practice 5 to 10 minutes of SEISO daily. How do we go about this? In your own workstations, in your own work desks. You make it a habit to, before as the day starts, okay, before you go to your documents, review the drafts of your project documentation or your technical paper, the concept. Before anything else on the day, I tell you, you feel refreshed if you do SEISO. You wipe the top of your desk, for example. And another is you assign an owner to each equipment. So like in the agencies, we are assigned. Remember, we are assigned with a particular laptop or a particular even stapler. I remember I had that before. I was assigned to, because I was a director then, most of the equipment were under me. So all the more that I had to be conscious of, the maintenance of each of the equipment. So I had to talk with my team to ensure that one is assigned to a particular equipment, or we refer to in a government environment like ours, like here, like yours. Most of the equipment are computers, laptops, photocopying machine, etc. And another is SEISO practice. You combine cleaning or SEISO with inspection, which I mentioned a while ago. So we do not just look at, remember what, again, Prince said. What is essential is invisible to the naked eye. So we peek into the interiors. We look at the interiors because some of the essential parts of your computer, for example, might already be affected by, bacteria or something. All right. SEISO practice. Repeat, sweep, wipe, polish, check, fix. So you keep repeating. You sweep meaning to wipe your desk or the laptop or the computer assigned to you, even the overhead projector, the television set, etc. Those things that you need in your work operation. So sweep, wipe, polish, check, fix. By the way, you don't have to depend on your janitors or your housekeepers. I remember way back then in DAP, this is how we would do it, because we had our 5S standards, or we call it quality workplace standards. So we were expected individually to do our sweep, wipe, polish, check, fix on the equipment assigned to us. And that really was very helpful to everybody. So everybody had his share or had his or her share of responsibility. Then provide necessary tools for critical points of cleaning. Normally this is done when there is a big SEISO day or a big cleanup day, okay, where everyone is given materials. So another SEISO practice that can drum up interest and engagement or active involvement among everyone is a big cleanup day. I remember before in DAP and in some agencies that we have given assistance to in terms of implementing 5S, the big cleanup day is an exciting day. Normally, this is declared as no work operations in the sense that clients, prior to the big cleanup day, were informed that they can just come back on the next day because we have a big cleanup day. So some clients were wondering, what is it? So in the process, we also drummed up their interest, and they eventually became our own clients. So at least they saw for themselves that we tried to practice 5S ourselves, okay? Because this is a challenge for us in productivity. Sometimes it's easier said than done, and it's easier to say it than to practice it. So that's why we always go back, we always check on ourselves. Do we practice what we preach? Do we apply what we say? So that is why it's important to have a big cleanup day. You do it once or twice a year. Everybody should be involved, from the agency head down to the messengers, the janitors. Okay? So there is, of course, a 5S committee. We will discuss this in a little later when we go to the application. How can this be applied in your agency? So remember, that's the big cleanup day. Normally, it's done on a Friday because the following day, it's Saturday. So it's a wash day. So everyone can come in jeans, can come in working clothes, and then the committee, you know, I remember before, during our time, we ask for donations for rags, unused clothes or clothes that are not needed anymore. So we put them together and then we distributed them to the different offices or to the different departments. Or the representatives of the 5S committee per department or per center, like in the AP, per center. So the materials needed, the cleaning materials were put together, and then they were distributed to everyone. Okay, that's part of the program. And another thing, in the big, on this slide that you see here, you can see the one smiling, okay, facing front, is a CEO of a company. It's not in a public, it's not coming from a public sector organization, but just the same, you know. The message of this picture is that it's important that the agency head, for example, your president, the secretary, is very much part of the big cleanup day, because this is symbolic. The presence of the agency head is a very strong message to everyone. So everyone will definitely become interested, and they themselves will be engaged in any 5S activity. Okay? So it's leading by example. Unless, of course, the agency head or the secretary has some emergency. Unless, of course, the agency head or the secretary has some emergency, you know, matters to attend to, then the next in line should be there. This is what we did here in the AP. Some of the SEISO practices, of course, prevent causes of dust and dirt. We have discussed it a while ago. Making daily maintenance points clear by providing visible instructions. And after we are done with the first 3 S's, Seiri, SEITON, and SEISO, we are now ready to go to the next level of S, which is Seketsu, which is the 4th S. This is when you document, put together the good practices that you have experienced or demonstrated in the first 3 S's. Then, this is when you can come up with sort of, not necessarily a manual, but a document that that contains the good practices that you have demonstrated or done in the first 3 S's. So that is why the 4th S is standardize. Okay, this is when the 5S core group or the committee will sit down together, okay, and harvest. Okay, I say this, harvest, pick up from the 5S audit reports, the good practices observed from the different offices. Then, that's when you can develop your own workplace standards, okay, applying the principles of the 3 S's. So in Sekitsu, or standardize, we also have key principles. What are these? Visual management and standardization. So in this step, or in this phase of 5S, this means maintaining a high standard of housekeeping and workplace organization at all times. So the first principle of visual management, simply put, this is how you make use of signages, okay, visual displays. Because we can always come up with a lot of signages, but the question is, does it add value to how we do things, how we operate in the work area? Does it add value to our customers, to the citizens coming in to your agency to avail of the services, for example? So, for example, being able to locate where you are or the specific department that a citizen wants to go because for some particular transaction, applying for a, let's say, business permit if it's in a city government. So when you talk of visual management, are they able to see that appropriate signage so that they will be able to locate easily that particular department? Then standardization, this connotes that the practices that you have done in the first 3 S's, you put them into writing, you document them, so that everybody follows. So this creates a certain mindset among everyone that they have to act together in rhyme and reason. There's rhyme and reason, so to speak. All right. So some Seiketsu practices, visual control signs, we see this in the highways. Okay. Of course, in the context of the office, you see this at the lobby. If you have a very good visual control or visual management, so when you enter the lobby of, let's say, a city government in the city hall, there you can find the layout. So at the lobby, you can find the layout where the offices are located, okay, where to find this and that. So that is a way of applying the Seiketsu practice using the visual management. And then color coding. This is also visual management application, which is a Seiketsu practice. You color code your bookshelves, your filing method, which we picked up from the 2nd S, SEITON. Okay? Remember, in Seiketsu, we harvest the good practices that we have done in the first 3 S's. So foolproofing, or what we call pokayoke, okay? You prevent things from happening, prevent disturbances or abnormalities from happening. So you make use, foolproofing or pokayoke is also a Seiketsu practice. For example, on this slide, the papers on chair method can also be used to remind or discipline oneself about dealing with important papers or documents. So that's pokayoke. In other words, so because you see that on this picture, there's a mix of documents there. So if you maintain this kind of scenario, if you keep it as it is, then chances are some of the important documents the more important documents might be missed out. Okay? So when you have also papers on, well, the meaning of this is that you have papers on chair method is that, meaning you know that paper on that chair are very important. Okay? So once you get there, so you pick up those documents, okay? Because these are important. So Pukayoke, or foolproofing, is also considered as a Seiketsu practice. Okay? Some Seiketsu practices, this is a simple example of a practice responsibility label. So like what I said a while ago, when you get to visit a city hall, so if this city government is practicing 5S, you will see that there is a organizational structure on display, and then you will see the names of the officers, let's say the mayor, and then their designation, their name. So we call it responsibility labels. It's an org chart, okay? And wire management is also a Seiketsu practice. Remember, when you have your computers, this is also a common problem or disturbance when your wires are mixed up. Okay, they can form an octopus-like wire, and when, for example, there will be a relayout, when you will do a relayout of your office, and if you do not have a proper wire management, meaning to say you do not properly label the wires, then, you know, it happened to us before. So the wires can be mixed up. So a particular wire can go together with, in other words, there will be an mismatch of the wire and the computer. Okay, so on the slide, so you can see that. So you put color codes also on the different wires so that it will be easy to trace also which wire is for which laptop or which equipment. Inspection marks, so this is also another Seiketsu practice. So a specific example here is, this is a report. You see this is a draft report, and there are some marks. This is actually inspection marks, but these are comments or remarks from someone who has edited the draft report. So this is also a Seiketsu practice, so inspection marks. So from there, you'll be able to pinpoint where the problem is and how you will be able to address that using the inspection marks. Maintenance labels. So when you see a label or a description, example on the slide here, there's a photocopying machine. So there is a paper written on it is how many papers should be put inside that photocopying machine, something like that. So we also refer to it as a maintenance label, which is an example of a Seiketsu practice. Some more Seiketsu practices: prevention of dust, dirt, noise, and vibration. I can do it blindfolded. 1-point lessons. So again, you pick it up from the first 3 S's, the 1-point lessons, and translate these into standards. One is best campaign, is a Seiketsu practice. So meaning to say there is only one location for project management files. Okay. 1-day processing of a transaction, or even half a day. So you put a standard. 1-file project. Okay. You don't keep so many copies of your project files. 1-hour meeting, 1-page memo, 1-copy filing, 1-minute call of your telephone, 1-tool work. Okay, so another tool in or technique in Seiketsu is visual control. Okay, so this is simply put how you make use of the visual aids, how you come up with visual aids. Some do it very creatively. So some do it, for example, per department, there is a color code. Let's say the finance department has its particular color. So also the Center for Governance has its particular color. The Center for or Productivity and Development Center has also its own color code. So this can be done in agreement among the 5S representatives in a core group. Okay, there are some more types of visual control. So I don't need to discuss this in detail. Actually, when you see this on your slides, these are self-explanatory. All right, so you take a look at this, and perhaps you can even cite some of the visual controls that you are doing, or maybe you're not conscious about it, but you have actually these visual controls in your own offices. All right? I will not go into that in detail anymore. So in Sekitsu, we never stop in implementing the first 3 S's. And we maintain a high standard of cleanliness and put everything in writing, meaning to say, again, may I reiterate, that's why we have to be very religious in practicing the first 3 S's. Why? Because through practicing the first 3 S's, we will be able to harvest, pick up the good practices, put them into writing, document them, because these can already be your workplace standards. Okay? Applying the principles of the 3 S's. So that's why when you reach the 4th level of Sekitsu, meaning that you are ready to develop, create your own sets of standards, and which will lead you to the next S. The last S, which is Shitsuke. Okay? In Shitsuke, it also has key principles. But in Shitsuke, simply put, or in layman's term, it's actually doing things spontaneously without being told or ordered. That is why very important are the standards in the 4th level of Sekitsu. So in the 4th level, you continuously practice, follow these standards, such that in the process, you develop already that mindset, that habit, which leads you to reach the 4th S, which is Shitsuke, or self-discipline. So it also means training people to follow good housekeeping rules independently. Okay? And the key principles are habit formation, having a disciplined workplace, even if the boss is not telling you to do this, you yourself does it because you believe that that is what you are supposed to do. That's the right thing to do. And that is also called integrity. So when you do it, when no one is looking, you do it the right way the first time and all the time, because that is the essence of productivity. So, disciplined workplace and empowerment of workers. Because, why empowerment? Because you are given the freedom, the liberty to follow the standards. Because we are all adult learners here in your work environment, in your agency. So your boss doesn't need to remind you from time to time that, you have to follow the rules and the standards. So that's why some Shitsuke practices, very simple, but they are very impactful. Greeting people with a smile. So when your customers, the citizens, are there, they are visiting you, they are there for transactions. So we always give them that smile. We greet them. Okay? Even in greeting, you can come up with your own way of greeting that will speak of the kind of organization or agency that you have. Be a good listener. So, part of the discipline of the habit is we listen to the customers, to the citizens. We listen also to the people next in line to us because they are our internal customers. Be kaizen-oriented, meaning to say that you are always open to continuous improvement. Change for the better. Okay? Demonstrate team spirit. This is also another Shitsuke practice. Okay? So remember in 5S, you are always with a team. Okay? While you are expected to do your own role in your own workstation, but you also have to work with your team. Be professional in your conduct and dealings with others. Putting things back in your proper place after use, punctuality, keeping your workplace clean and tidy, following the safety rules strictly or the workplace standards, wearing your uniform, office attire and shoes, and observing proper office decorum. So these are some SYSTEMATIZE practices. So if you will notice, these are already in SYSTEMATIZE. You're already on that stage that you're creating that kind of culture that you have developed while practicing the first 3 S's and following the standards at the 4th S, Seiketsu. So in SYSTEMATIZE, that's why we have a 5S toolbox. On this slide, you notice a toolbox. This is ideas that you can pick up easily when you will implement your own 5S. Okay? So why 5S toolbox? Because at this stage in SYSTEMATIZE, it would be easy for you now to identify the good practices because you have done it yourself in the first 3 S's. Another is fixed point photography, because in SYSTEMATIZE, we also have to, for us to be able to sustain your 5S, remember that we do situation appraisal. Probably in the next series of the learning session, we will discuss more on this. What is the situation appraisal? Because this is a technique that is used in 5S before and after you implement 5S. Before, why? Because as the term itself, you want to appraise, you want to understand the current situation from the perspective of 5S. So you make use of a camera or a photograph. Now you have your cell phone. So you take a picture of a particular scenario where you think there's a need for improvement from the perspective of 5S. Then after implementing 5S on that particular scenario, then you take a picture on that same scenario, okay, then you will see the difference. So that's what we call fixed point photography, and this is at the stage of SYSTEMATIZE. You can also do it. Okay? Photo documentation of changes. So this is a SYSTEMATIZE practice. Okay, before and after. Okay, you can apply this. Also, another example, in your own, when you open your desk, then you will see, oh my God, are these my things? Chances are, if you're not yet implementing 5S, maybe you will find yourself, or this picture is relatable to you. Maybe you are in the same scenario where your office things are mixed up. Your ruler, your cell phone, your gadgets are all inside your personal drawer. Okay? And then take a look at the improved version. You might want to challenge yourself and organize your things and become even more productive. All right, so after the SYSTEMATIZE, the second to the last subtopic is, the question is, how can 5S be applied in the public sector? So having been familiar with the concepts and principles of 5S, how can this be applied in the public sector? From my experience, although this is generic, this can also be applied in the healthcare sector, in the manufacturing sector, in the small and medium enterprise, etc. So practically across all industries. There are key steps in 5S implementation. And I would also like to emphasize that 5S follows the PDCA, which is the very essence of productivity improvement, the Plan, Do, Check Act. You prepare, so that's the plan part. Then the do part, you do the actual practice. And the check part, you do the regular 5S audit and evaluation. Then the act part is the sustainability. So you try to address those. Remember, in 5S, when you do audit, you identify the strengths and the opportunities for improvement. Okay? The strengths, these can be adopted as your standards. By the way, in Seiketsu, in doing 5S audit, by the way, this is something that we will probably in the next series of learning sessions on 5S, we can discuss this further. But let me mention that one important aspect in 5S for you to be able to sustain your program is to do your regular 5S audit. Okay? Why? Because this is when you get to find out and understand where you are right now in terms of your 5S journey. Okay? So in your 5S audit or checklist, you adopt your standards. Remember in the Sekitsu, you develop your standards, picking up from the good practices that you've done in your first 3 S's. So you can put this into a checklist. So that can be your 5S audit form or audit checklist. Okay? So this you will use when you do your rounds in the different offices to ensure that everybody, all the offices are on the right track. Okay? So that is why I am emphasizing this, because that is a key to sustainability. I have seen organizations, agencies in the public sector, companies in the private sector that failed to sustain their 5S. Why? Because they failed to do the regular 5S audit. Okay? So that is why I am emphasizing that. So these are the key steps. Question is, can this be applied in the public sector? Certainly yes. Okay? So it is important to form a 5S core team. So in your agency, if you have not yet started with your 5S journey, then it is a blessing or approval from the agency head or the secretary. Okay? There is a need for a core team. Why? A team or a group has to oversee the implementation of your 5S program. Otherwise, if no one takes care of it, then chances are your 5S is doomed to fail. So you have to have a core team. Now, the core team should be given credit. In some organizations, in some agencies, it is integrated in their PAR, in their performance appraisal. All right? So that's why the team gets to be motivated to actively engage themselves in the 5S program. So here on this slide, you can see the Plan, Do, Check, Act. And very specifically, in planning, you set benchmarks or targets. So it would be good if you set some benchmarks. So how do you envision your workplace environment to be after implementing 5S? It would also be good if you do local study mission. Probably you can go to local government units like the city government of Marikina. They're very good in practicing 5S. I think they have sustained it. Now in Manila with Yorme, no, Mayor Isko, maybe they are not formalizing it yet as a 5S, but what they're doing in Manila now is very much a practice of 5S. I've been to Divisoria. I've been to the Jones Bridge, is really beautiful, to the Binondo area. It's actually 5S in practice, all right? They may not be conscious about it, but it is. So I would encourage you to visit organizations that are implementing 5S. ISO QMS certified agencies, we expect them to be ISO practitioners. All right? So that's why I cannot imagine an ISO certified agency that is not practicing 5S. Unfortunately, I've seen some, so there is an inconsistency. So they have to check on it, okay? Because if you're ISO certified, you have to have a very good 5S in place. Do part the announcements, education campaign to drum up interest. So in one agency that I have been part of its implement 5S journey before, no less than the secretary or the agency head spearheaded the advocacy campaign on 5S. Okay, I remember we had motorcade around the area. So there's a lot to explore. Be creative. All right. The check part, again, the 5S audit. Okay, this will help you sustain your program. Document your accomplishments, the difficulties, the learnings that you have gained over the period, over the months of implementing 5S. Because in checking, in doing your audit, that's when you pinpoint those things that you need to address. And this is the act phase. Okay? So there you go. We complete the cycle of the productivity improvement, the Plan, Do, Check, Act. Remember, productivity starts and ends with measurement. That's why in 5S, you have to start with your situation appraisal. That's a way of measuring using your standards. Where you are at, you can even assign points. Okay? All right. So that is a simple way of how you can apply this in your agency. Okay? If you do have questions, please feel free to ask the team, or you can always communicate with me. So the project team will let you know how to get in touch with me through online, through Facebook, through Messenger. Until now, I am in touch with my participants around the world in other countries. Now, on this slide, this is the organizational structure. So when your core group is organized, you can follow this, or you can have your own modification. What I am emphasizing here is that there has to be specific point persons. All right? There has to be proper assignment of roles. Normally, the subcommittees are on education and training, rewards and recognition, promotions and advocacy, evaluation and audit. Okay? But that doesn't mean that, for example, a promotion is done, the team has no job or task anymore. No, you can always join the team on rewards and recognition, evaluation and audit. Because in the first phase of the 5S implementation, the most active are the subcommittees on education and training and promotions subcommittee. And once your 5S program is in place, then what becomes more active is the evaluation and audit subcommittee and the rewards and recognition subcommittee. So in the spirit of productivity improvement, where teamwork, team spirit is promoted and encouraged, so the other members of the other teams on education and training and promotions can join the evaluation and audit and rewards and recognition. And in the process, you also learn a lot from each other. All right, elements of success: when an institution has its own will, with the agency head or the secretary taking the lead, then there's no reason why your 5S program will not be successful. So full management support, participation at all levels, so meaning from the top down, bottom up, your messengers, your janitors, the drivers. In fact, I noticed this in some of the vehicles, that your drivers, some of the drivers are not practicing 5S. So they also have to be educated on. Okay, program organization and management. So the core team is cohesive, they are engaged, then chances are your 5S program will be continuous and successful. There has to be communication, effective communication feedback. So whenever you do your 5S audit, right then and there, you have to give feedback to the process owner or to the ones assigned on that particular workstation. Continuous training and capability building, promotional activities should be continued, then rewards and recognition, and then, of course, monitoring, evaluation. Factors leading to the success of 5S: strong sponsorship and leadership of the agency head, active promoter, good example by management, by the officers, regular audits, cooperation from the offices, good documentation, friendly competition. So maybe you can try this out later on after 6 months of implementing 5S. Then you can have a friendly competition among the different offices. Doesn't have to be, the reward doesn't have to be cash because it's difficult to sustain. So it can be just one concrete example, a free lunch with your agency head or with the secretary, or a free, an overnight stay in the DAP Tagaytay, something like that. Let the core group be very creative. Visits by external consultants. So it's also good to have other people take a look at where you are now in terms of your 5S journey. You can invite people from other agencies, or you can invite consultants to have a more objective sense of evaluating your 5S implementation. And then always turn PDCA, plan, do, check, act, because you can never go wrong if you follow the PDCA cycle. Finally, how can 5S improve public sector productivity? Again, we go back to my storyline. So 5S is a productivity tool and technique. It addresses the changes in the areas on affecting people, structure, processes, specifically work processes, capability building, utilization of equipment and materials, managerial approach that will form part of the systematic and integrated approach to organizational performance management, where there is continuous improvement and innovation that will lead to your organization's efficient and effective performance that will create value, your value, to the society in general. All right? So therefore, remember this. How to improve when you, 5 is, how can public sector productivity be improved? 5 is as a systematized approach to organize work areas, keep rules and standards and maintain discipline will certainly contribute to the improvement of the work processes. And that is productivity improvement. When you train people and you develop the sense of positive attitude among the workers and educate them on how to go about 5S, you are influencing, you are improving their productivity level in terms of their capacities. So that's capability building. In terms of organizing, putting to get a place for everything, organizing your equipment, so you are also contributing to the proper utilization of equipment and materials. And also in the process of developing this culture of teamwork, of workplace organization, and adopting work simplification techniques, this will also have a significant value to developing, modifying your managerial approach. Okay? To be more specific, how can 5S be, or how can 5SES improve productivity in the public sector? So, on this slide, you will find a table that where you see specific changes that are expected from 5S implementation. And how can 5S improve productivity internally? What is its immediate effect on the process, on people, and on structure? And on the third column, what is the impact on customer or citizen? So, meaning to say, how can 5S improve productivity externally on the customer or citizens? So, the first one, very simple change from 5S implementation. Files are well organized, properly labeled based on agreed standards. So what is the immediate effect internally? For the people, for the staff, easy retrieval of documents. Okay, in terms of process, faster processing of documents needed as requested by clients. So what can be its impact on your customers? Externally, more customer citizens are served. Waiting time can be reduced. All right, you may ask, so is it evidence-based? How can we prove this? Yes, there has been specific stories where I picked up these examples. But you can try this out yourselves also. You can have your own way of measuring, of identifying really how 5S can improve your level of productivity. The second, proper layout of the office, meaning no unnecessary things or blockages in the walkways. Internally, what is the immediate effect? Free movement of employees or staff, less travel or walking time incurred, better coordination with those from other offices. All right? I hope you will agree with me that externally, its impact on the customers is that you give immediate attention to customers or citizens, waiting time is reduced, and eventually, complaints may be reduced. The third one, when you have standardized signages through Seiketsu and public display signs, what is the immediate effect internally in terms of people, in terms of process? Not certain of which and whose office a citizen should proceed is avoided. Easy identification and location of the office to visit. So, what could be its impact externally on your customers or citizens? Long waiting time is avoided. Transaction time could be reduced. And some more examples. Rules are standardized and followed. Employees are able, this is structurally and also in terms of people, employees are able to adopt the same set of standards, develops a one or unified mindset among everyone. What is its impact on the customers? Developing a mindset of the importance of following the rules. Customers or citizens will become motivated to follow what the agency does by seeing examples from employees themselves. Diba? When we see that the employees themselves do it, then we as the citizens, we also would be inspired to do it ourselves. The fifth one, everyone becomes more actively involved in the 5S activities, including the top-level management. So structurally, immediate effect, teamwork is strengthened. Employees and staff are driven to take action, given the example coming from the senior officers, and it will enhance cooperation. So for the fifth specific change expected from 5S implementation, you'll notice that the impact is the same as number 4. But here, I just would like to emphasize that this has a positive effect on the structure, meaning when everyone becomes more actively involved in the 5S activities, including the top-level management, so internally, teamwork is strengthened. The employees and the staff are driven to take action, given the example of the senior officers. So in the process, cooperation is enhanced. So outwardly, the customers or the citizens will also be inspired to see your agency having this sense of teamwork, because everyone, regardless of the position or the designation, is engaged in your 5S program. And finally, as an example, there are still a lot of examples. I just cited here some specific ones that are relatable and that I'm sure you can pick up something from, and you can also implement this or practice this in your own agencies. Number 6, when everything is in its proper place, specific example, equipment is properly labeled and kept in order and kept in proper storage area. What is its immediate effect internally? Search time is reduced and or eliminated. The processing of transaction that would need that particular equipment is faster, right? So what is its impact on the customer, citizens? Transaction time could be reduced, and mind you, there will be lesser complaints or even no complaints at all. All right? So again, there are still a lot of examples that can be cited. I just came up with some 6 examples that are relatable in the context of the public sector. Okay, that's it. Again, we in our learning session, we talked about 5S in general, following the 4-question form of outline. What is 5S as a productivity tool and technique? How is it done? What are the phases or the steps of 5S? How can 5S be applied in the public sector? And how can 5S improve productivity in the public sector? So I hope that you were able to pick something from this learning session. Please feel free also to contribute your own thoughts, especially when you start off with your journey on 5S. Let us keep this culture of sharing what we have learned and what we know. All right? And finally, I just would like to end this learning session with this from this slide. So it says here, strive for excellence. So I can say from my almost 30 years of experience being part of 5S, but I do not claim that I am a perfect 5S practitioner. I still am a work in progress. I realize every day over the years that there are still a lot to learn. And I am just fascinated by the millennials now. They have their own way of looking at 5S. Okay, and very interesting. I'm picking up lessons also from them. So, we strive for excellence, and 5S is a key to excellence. You always have to give it 100%, because if you don't, someone, someplace will give 100% and will beat you when you meet. So 5S may look simple, but it is not really. It's very challenging, but it's worth embarking on. And finally, my good friend Steve Jobs once said, "We don't get a chance to do that many things, and everyone should be really excellent, because this is our life. Life is brief, and then you die, you know. And we've all chosen to do this with our lives. So do it better. Be damn good. Be damn good in your 5S program. Damn good in your 5S program. We better be worth it." That's it. Good luck. God bless. And we hope we meet again for your success story on your 5S journey.